So in this video, we are going to make this modified Holiday Armadillo Stocking. The modifications that I made are the toe piece is left off, the heel piece is left off, so that's easy. But then the cuff I made out of minky fabric, so it's not made the same way that you make the cuff in the pattern. In the pattern you use leather vinyl cork, something that doesn't fray, and the bottom edge is folded under. With this one, I've got the lining fabric on the wrong side. The interfacing that I used on the lining for this one is Therafuse Light from Fabric Therapy. It is the one that you iron on, not the adhesive one. It might be a little bit too stiff, but maybe with use it would soften up a little bit. I honestly don't know if any interfacing is really needed. Maybe just a light woven like I call for in the pattern. I don't know, I kind of like the structure of the stocking, but it is a little more stiff. So yeah, stay tuned and watch how I make this stocking. Thanks for watching. If you like what you see, give me a thumbs up and let me know. So let's get started. This is different than how the pattern is written since I'm not using vinyl or leather or cork for the cuff. I want the nap to be in the right direction. So I want this to be the bottom of my cuff and this to be the top of my cuff. So the first thing I'm going to do, I cut a piece of minky for the exterior side, and then I cut a piece of just what I'm using for my lining fabric. And I'm going to place these right sides together. My lining doesn't really have a right or wrong side. I can't remember what this fabric is called, but I found out today that I don't have a lot of solid cotton fabrics in my stash. It's not something I use often. If I use solid anything, it's typically like waterproof canvas or bag linings. So, all right, so I'm just lining up the bottom edge, and then I'm going to clip that together. And then we're going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance to sew it together along the bottom edge only. And I am not adding the toe piece or the cuff piece on this. But you could do a similar thing. You would just need to back it and then sew the pieces together and then turn it right side out, since you can't leave the minky raw edge because that would make a mess. All right, so I'm sewing this together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance along the long straight matched up edge only. This pattern is going to be pretty forgiving, so if this is not exact, it's not a big deal. This isn't like making a bag or a wallet or something. And my thread is like neon green. I wanted red thread and I don't have any. And I don't know how well my sewing machine is going to like something so thin. I did interface my lining, so I think it'll be okay. We'll manage. I should be using my 8700 probably to sew this. That's fine. So the last one that I made were actually my family stockings, and I made them out of buffalo plaid flannel, which were like a sheet set that I found at the store because I couldn't find buffalo plaid flannel. And then leather. They have a leather cuff and toe and heel piece. All right. So we'll trim the threads, and then we're going to flip this open. And I'm just gonna gonna finger press this seam open. Again, this doesn't have to be super perfect. And I'm gonna have minky everywhere. Okay, so now I want to fold it in half with the lining right sides together and the exterior part right sides together. And I'm just pushing, or I'm opening up that seam allowance. So, and I do want to kind of make sure it's lined up. And then I'll just clip it together along this edge. Two minutes in and everything's covered in minky. All right, now we're going to sew this together along this whole edge using a 1/2 inch seam allowance also. Hopefully my sewing machine doesn't just like eat the lining portion. It seems okay. It's better if I kind of pull it taut. All right, now we're going to turn this so the wrong sides are together. And I'm not going to top stitch the bottom of this, but I am going to fold it in such a way that the minky covers or is like extended past the lining. So it's like this. So that way from when it's like right side out, you're not going to see this lining fabric at all. And I'm just keeping the seam allowances pressed open. And then I have kind of extra lining that I'll trim off probably after I sew it on. We'll see. I'm figuring this out as I go. Okay, so for the hanger piece, I have 1/2 inch seatbelt webbing. I think I got this from Indo Love Creations. So I just cut that 6 inches long. So it's already the finished size. So easy for that. We want the back piece, the back exterior. Nope, the back lining with the toe pointing toward the right. All right, so my lining is the same green fabric, and I backed it with TheraFuse Light from Fabric Therapy. It's kind of like a fleece almost. It's non-woven, but it's very thin, and I thought it would just give it a nice structure without making it like too thick and puffy. So I'm going to loop my hanger in half like this, and then place it about 1 inch in from, is this right? Well, this is what the directions say. We're going to go with it. I'm placing it about 1 inch in from the edge, and I'm just going to base that in place using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I did heat seal the edges of the webbing so that it won't unravel. You don't want to come out after your stocking's been stuffed and have it laying on the floor because the webbing ripped out. Okay, so now we're skipping step 6 because we're not using the heel and toe pieces. So I'm going to set these aside for now. And I want to take my 2 exterior main pieces, which I'm using this print from Fabric Therapy. It's got all your favorite Christmas movies on it. We want to place these right sides together and line up all of the raw edges. All right, and then we'll just go ahead and clip those together. All right, now we're going to sew this together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You can use 3/8 seam allowance if you want, or anything, just use the same seam allowance throughout the whole pattern. Okay. Now that we've got that all sewn together, we are going to repeat the same process with the lining, but we're going to leave a 5-inch long opening along the back straight edge so that we can turn it right side out when we're finished. Okay, so place these right sides together. And again, we'll just clip all the way around the edges. All right, so along the back first so that I don't actually forget to keep that opening there, which I still feel like I could. Okay, so I'm going to sew a few inches down from the top. You could use a slightly larger than 1/2 inch seam allowance on the lining to make sure that it fits inside of the exterior really smoothly, but I think we shouldn't have a problem since there isn't any thick, bulky interfacing in this. So I'm just going to sew down a few inches from the top and then make sure that I backstitch really well. And then go ahead and trim those threads, and then we'll skip about 5 inches and resume sewing. And it doesn't have to be exactly 5 inches. It's just the larger the gap, the easier it will be to turn right side out. Make sure you backstitch again when you start sewing again. The glitter clips that I'm using are from mormino.com. Exterior and interfacing is from Fabric Therapy. The snips that I'm using came with my Sewing Blurbs subscription. The Minky, I don't remember exactly, Michael's maybe or Joann's. I ordered it online and I can't tell you where I ordered it from. I did get several colors. So one of my best friends, Amy, at Off With Their Threads, she sells embroidery patterns for your embroidery machine. And she's got a lot of really cute, like plushy stuffed animal designs. So I bought a bunch of Minky for making her designs because they're like so cute. Okay. All right, so step number 8, turn the exterior main right side out. If you wanted to trim the seam allowance along any of the curved parts, you can do that, and that will help it lay nicer. The finished stocking, the curves will be smoother. I prefer to just trim it down than to notch it because I feel like that adds like kind of stress points. All right, so we're going to turn the exterior right side out. And this fabric is called, oh, why am I going to forget what it's called? Smooth Lux? That's not right. Theratex from Fabric. Yeah, this is called Theratex from Fabric Therapy. And it's got a really nice like structure to it. It's shiny. I don't know. It's nice. Okay, so we have that turned right side out. We're going to take the cuff and also flip that right side out. So shake off all the fuzzy all over my clothes. Okay, we want to find the back seam. And I want to line up the seam of the exterior with the seam of the lining. And then we're just going to slide this over top the exterior of the stocking. And the way I did it, my lining is a little bit taller because I don't want it to show on the exterior. So I'm going to line this up in such a way that the top of the stocking lines up with where the top of the exterior, like the fur portion is, not with the actual top of the lining. All right, and then I'm just going to clip this together. And then we're going to baste it using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And that's going to be a 1/4 inch excluding this lining portion. So from a 1/4 inch from the top of the exterior piece or the stocking piece. And you could trim the lining first if you wanted to. I just don't feel like it. Or you could make the bottoms of them line up. And then the seam, if the seam was directly along the bottom, the tops of these would match up. But hopefully I make sense what I'm doing. So the exterior kind of flips around into the inside a little bit. All right, move this out of the way. And now we're just going to baste this together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Doesn't have to be super perfect, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. It's truly the beauty of sewing something like this. Nothing has to be real super perfect, so it's an easy, fast, fun project. I think this Minky is a little more difficult to sew, but I think this could be an easier project for anybody that's teaching their kids or grandkids how to sew, and something fun that they would enjoy. All right, so I am going to go ahead and trim this down now so that everything is even with the top of the stocking. I'm actually trimming some of my exterior off too. It's all fine. Very, very low stress project. All right, now we want to place this exterior main with the cuff inside the lining main. Right sides are together and the cuff will be stuffed down in between the lining and exterior. We want to match the front and back seams and pin or clip all the way around the top edges. So I'm just going to shove my whole arm down in here. And then push the cuff down inside too. Don't wear anything that you want to keep clean while you're sewing with Minky, because you will be covered in it. Okay, so the back seam is there. So I'm going to line that up first. And then the front seam I'll line up, and I'm just pressing the seams open. And I did not trim the seam allowance on my lining, but I can still do that before I turn it right side out, just along the curves. And that I don't think is necessary because I didn't do it on my other ones. So if you want to. All right, so then I'm just clipping together around the whole opening. Okay, and now we'll just sew these together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. And again, it does not have to be perfect here. such a forgiving thing to sew. I actually might also sew a pillowcase soon, which seems silly. I mean, it's not silly, but I need to make a new pillowcase for a pillow that was an old pillow of mine that my husband gave to the dog, and she really likes it. But it's like laying on the floor in my living room, and it looks bad. All right, made it all the way around. I'm going to leave this full seam allowance here. And I'm just going to trim around the curves on the lining. This TheraFuse interfacing is really nice. It's like very thin, but structured. And I think it'll be good for the lining on this. All right, so now we're going to turn this whole thing right side out through that opening. So I'm going to stick my arm down inside and get the exterior and just start pulling everything out. I feel like for years that everything that's inside the stocking is going to be covered in fur scraps. All right, you want to really push the curves out nicely. All right, and then we're going to not close the hole up just yet because we might need to make adjustments. I like to top stitch before I close up the lining. So we're going to push the whole lining down into the exterior, which is a little bit hard. I'm better doing this stuff like in my lap than out in front of me. All right, and if this isn't in there super perfect at this point, that's okay because we're still going to pull it back out. You really want to make sure that the top is lined up nicely. And I'm kind of just going to pull on the cuff piece and the bottom of the exterior to get that turned out really well. And then we're just going to top stitch using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to do it from the lining side with the cuff up. You're not sewing through the cuff. So you're sewing through the lining and the exterior of the stocking, like body. And it's going to be covered by the cuff, so it's not a big deal if it's Not super perfect. All right. Now we're just going to pull the lining back out. Find that opening. You can press this if you want to, but I'm just going to kind of push the seam allowance inside along the opening, and then just clip this together. And you could hand sew this closed if you wanted to have stitches that you didn't see. I'm honestly not that worried about it. I don't think anybody's going to be looking down inside the stocking to see if they can see sewing, but that's an option. I do know some people like prefer to close the turning holes by hand. I prefer never to hand stitch anything. So, all right, we're going to just kind of edge stitch this. So not even necessarily an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, just as close to the edge as you can get. And I'm only sewing along that opening. All right, and then one more time, we're going to shove this lining back down into the exterior. I'm going to do this in my lap. All right, everything is pushed down inside, and then you just flip the cuff. You have your little hanging loop at the back, and there you have it. Super simple, quick project. I love it with the fur cuff. I really love the buffalo plaid with the brown leather that I made before. But this one is amazing for a more fun look. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you will try this pattern. If you are a member of my Facebook group, this pattern is free for members. Check in the featured posts at the top of the page and you'll find a discount code to get this pattern for free from my website. So thank you for watching, and I can't wait to see your armadillo stockings. Bye.